Welcome, everyone, to Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. I am your host, Chamber CEO Rachel Beld, and it's my privilege to interview the movers, shakers, and change makers impacting our amazing Vista community. Today, I'm excited to welcome my friend, Lev Gershman. Lev is the founder and manager of Tideline Partners, an investment management development company. And in addition to managing commercial property and investments, Lev and his team build things. Really cool things, cool projects that we're going to talk about in a few minutes. The development side of Tideline focuses on seeking out and developing projects characterized by affordability, access, and walkability. And Lev's background includes 15 years of real estate experience, including transaction and asset management, operations management, and leadership. Lev volunteers on a number of nonprofit boards. He's a trustee of the Urban Land Institute, co-chair of San Diego Small Scale Infill Development Council, and co-chair of ULI Next Global. He's also a husband to his beautiful wife, Liz, and a dad to two super cute kiddos. So welcome, Lev. I'm glad to have you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here, and I love the stuff you're doing with the Chamber. It's very new age and very timely. It's great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate having you here. And so I just have a few questions and we're going to just have a chat.
Awesome.
Just see what we can talk about. So to start out, I like to know how people ended up doing what they're doing. So I'm really interested in workforce development and exposing people to careers and understanding that. So how did you end up in real estate? Like, how did you start doing what
real
you're
estate.
doing? Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is an easy answer. My mom told me to be in real estate.
Okay.
Yep.
So listen to your mother, everybody.
Listen to your mom.
Okay.
Yeah, good advice from mom.
Okay.
Yeah, I was in IT, actually. I was working for Hewlett-Packard, and the tech bubble happened, and I got laid off and couldn't get a job. And I was sitting at the counter in the kitchen talking to my parents. I had moved back into the house because I was unemployed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just, soul searching. And my mom said, real estate's pretty interesting. It always seems like people need houses, and why don't you look into that? So long story short, got out of IT, went to grad school, got my master's in finance and urban economics, and ended up in investment banking, and then ended up going on my own.
Okay. So were you ever fascinated by like architecture or interested in buildings, or were you really particular how your room was laid out? Did you ever feel like when you were a kid, were there any signs that real estate development was?
Yeah, I wish I could give you a really cool answer to that, but no, there really wasn't. My mom jokingly would say that I liked complexity. That was in reference to the women I was dating.
Okay.
But I think she was right, and it's just a opportunity to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
And land use has so many private and public rights
Mm-hmm.
that the complexity of navigating through delivering a product is really significant. Beyond the finance of it and working in banking, I realized that I started understanding how money came together, what money was looking for in
Mm-hmm.
order to justify the risk and the reward. And through that process, I realized that I was really interested in actually our borrowers
Mm-hmm.
and how they were using that money to actually effectuate change.
Wow.
And I got more and more curious about that and realized that while I enjoyed and it was intellectually stimulating providing financing for the projects, I really wanted to be on the project side.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to spend time both putting money out
Mm-hmm.
before the Great Recession, and then I got the opportunity to figure out how to solve problems once plans didn't work out, and I was really doing workouts and resolutions, restructures, bankruptcies, all kinds of stuff you don't ever really want to be on the side as a borrower.
Right.
So I got to learn a lot there, and the opportunity was in my mind always to be an entrepreneur. And I think my, at the time, girlfriend, now wife, got tired of me talking about going on my own and starting
Mm-hmm.
a company that does cool things. And she said, you know what, either stop talking about it or leave your job and do it.
So your mom and your now wife, right, giving you great advice.
Yeah.
So listen to the ladies in your life,
Absolutely.
basically, right?
Yep.
That's
Women's got the wisdom.
first takeaway from this conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. So you and I met, I think it was maybe 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
A while ago. At a meeting at the VVBA, which was the Downtown Business Organization at the time.
Yep.
And I was just immediately struck by your creativity and your excitement and passion for what you were doing. But why Vista? How did you end up in that meeting? What about Vista interest you to make you show up at a downtown organization meeting in Downtown Vista?
Yeah, there's a couple of parallels there. So the first was when I started the company in 2013, I was trying to figure out what's the company actually going to do besides the idea of making places better, which sounds really cool. Why wouldn't you want to make places better? How do you actually do that? And what places do you make better? Because if you try to make all places better, you're not going to make anything better because you're too thin. So I kind of looked around the county and applied sort of an investment lens to identify areas that were positioned for growth and opportunity, and had a good risk-reward balance. And that lens is affordability based on where the world is today, access, and amenities. From that lens, I identified a couple of neighborhoods across the county that fit those criteria. Vista was one of them. My brother sent me a deal in Vista, and I came down here and I figured out that there was this really cool community plan in place. I got to meet some of the folks at the city who I really liked. They were very accessible, and they were genuine about why they were doing the things they were doing. And we ended up purchasing this first building, which is actually where the VVBA office was located.
Right. 150 Broadway.
That's right. That's right. And the other part of the parallel with Vista is in the mid to late 90s, when I was going to college, I worked in Downtown Vista, actually in the Adobe building, right next to the Yellow Deli.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So there was this almost sort of fate to it, kind of, in a weird way. And having worked down here in the late 90s and seeing how much it changed by 2013, 14.
So much change
in
that amount of time.
And I was like, this place is going. And I want to be part of the story and I want to help. And it was small enough, unlike East Village or downtown Oceanside, where I felt that, if I threw a small pebble, I can make some ripples and effectuate change and help the company create recognition and build recognition. Whereas if I try to do that in downtown, where there's big money, bigger developers, it would be much higher barriers to entry. So that strategy, I think for the companies, is paid off.
Yeah. Well, and it makes sense now, thinking about your history in Vista, which we'll talk more about, but that first project that you did was really 150 Broadway is kind of like a building renovation, sort of, right?
That's right.
There weren't major walls coming down outside or anything like that. So it was was a building that was not so lovely and then became quite lovely. So I can see how you started with that pebble. And then your next project in Vista. Now, wait, let me back up a second. So you bought the building, renovated it, put some art on it, which we'll talk about art in a minute. And then you sold the building because you no longer own it, right?
We don't own it.
Right.
Yeah, the plan was not to sell it. The plan was actually to own it, but we had a tenant that moved into the building that really liked the building and made us an offer where we could redeploy that capital and go do another cool thing. And it just made sense to do that.
Okay. Yeah. So then next, you see a shoe repair store.
Yeah.
And
Tom,
you say, right. and you meet this really cool dude, Tom, who's an amazing Vista legend, really, who's a cobbler, has been doing it for decades. And you think, that needs to be a place to get a great hot dog. Like, how did that, tell me how the dog house.
I didn't have that much vision to the hot dog.
Tell me how Dog House was born out of one day shoe repair.
Yeah. Wow. Well, man, maybe just one step back in terms of, that might be of interest in sort of exercise in humility, right? So the 150 Broadway project we purchased, and we essentially spent the same amount of money in improving it as we did on the purchase price. So green systems in the buildings and efficiency. There was inter-party parking maintenance agreements that had to be negotiated and signed with the Mom's Kitchen.
Right.
So it was interesting. And for me, in terms of the exercise in humility, I came from the banking world where I was working on 20, 30, 40, $50 million deals, moving numbers around and writing credit requests. And the numbers were big, and this was a really tiny deal. It was a small deal. And for me, learning how the process of actually building something with your hands was really new, and I really wanted to learn it. So we performed the renovation of the building as an owner builder.
Right. Your office was inside.
That's right. Well, eventually, once we finished it, yep. And there's still a vine at the front of that building. And I'm really proud of the fact that I got to do that, because I worked with our superintendent, and we rented a concrete saw, and we cut the concrete, and I personally planted those plants. And that was my way of getting out of the banking world and literally putting my hands into the dirt and into the building to figure out, how do you talk to labor? What drives them? How do you get people to do things well, to do quality, to care about what they're doing? So in terms of humility, I think on entrepreneurship, transitioning out of a big role at a brand name, I was with GE Capital, and going to something as, humble but meaningful as a small building in Vista and planting a plant in front of this building, to me was almost like this cleansing process.
Yeah.
And I'm really glad I did that. And I remember my brother was like, what are you doing? What are you doing digging ditches? I'm like, hey man, I need to do this because I just need to have that experience. So anyway.
Amazing. I love that story. Thank you for sharing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Tom Fleming and the doghouse. Well, the doghouse, not premeditated, but
Right.
but what was obvious when I met Tom, and I just kind of walked around downtown and talked to people and introduced myself and said, hey, my office is down the street. We bought this building. We just renovated it. And when I introduced myself and I shook hands with Tom, and, right away you could tell he's salt of the earth guy. And it's amazing how tall he is too.
He's so tall. So tall.
Hi, Tom. And I mentioned that, I have a background in Vista, and I was happy to see things changing and improving. And, my plan was to be part of the community and help effectuate that change. And if I don't remember who prompted it, I said, I'm looking for more properties and I think I said, I'm looking for more properties. And he said, and Tom said, I've been thinking about retiring at some point. Would you be interested? And I said, yeah, this is such a key corner, and there's so much history there that, activating this corner, and people, now come to your repair shop with their kids, and they used to go to the same shop to you when they were kids. So there's such an element of community there that I geeked out on that.
Yeah. It's cool.
And from there, we kind of really did a handshake deal where he said, well, I want to sell it. And I told him that I would give him fair market value, and looked at all of the properties in the market and showed him what everything had sold for. And we didn't involve a broker, and it was just a trust-based transaction, obviously in legal binding form, but it was really enjoyable for me to be able to do a deal in that spirit, because it's so non-existent, especially in the institutional level where everything is lawyered up and everybody just assumes that everyone's going to screw each other. That it was so refreshing to do that. And I, from that experience, felt, if I could do those types of deals, besides doing things that are, create value and that we feel good about, doing them with people that I enjoy doing business with, if I can, chart my path, I want to chart towards that. Right.
Yeah. So, well, in that deal too, in addition to the amenity that it brought to the community, just that the way it changed his life, that he had been there so long, and, he was able to retire and do it comfortably. And that's just a great thing.
Yeah. It worked out well. We were able to structure the transaction in a way that met his tax needs and allowed him to have a role in the project where we were able to preserve a piece of the artifact of the original building, that hexagonal, I think it's an octagon or hexagon building window. So you could tell I'm not an architect. Or a mathematician, I guess, or geometry. It's something. I don't know. It's something. But anyway, we were able to preserve that window and the story that went with Tom and I'll think of it in a second. The print shop guy, Ken Reese.
Ken Reese is printing.
Yeah, that's right. They would sit under that window and solve all the world's problems every morning. So hearing that from him also was like, okay, we got to somehow preserve this. And the focus for what do you put there, right, was, well, what was here and how did it function? How did it integrate with the community? So preserving that patio and having, creating some commercial space. We were confined to that just because of the small size of the lot. Having something that continued to serve the community was really important. And Doghouse, that wasn't the plan, actually. The plan was if we could do a really cool, small, family-owned restaurant, farm to table, something like that could come into this space, that would be amazing. And we spent quite a bit of time after we built the building shell, knocking on restaurant doors all over Encinitas, Carlsbad, Oceanside, Solana Beach, Del Mar, you name it, all the rest. And hey, look, what's happening downtown is this amazing place. It's up and coming. This is where you need your second location. Amazing. But we really couldn't get the interest at the time. South Santa Fe wasn't done.
Right.
The retail brokers were really kind of, the folks that are doing the transactions in Little Italy, where I couldn't get them to pay attention. So, a broker had reached out and said, hey, there's this, startup that's called Doghouse. It's these guys out of Pasadena, and, they want your space. They get it. And they've got a couple locations. I was like, I don't know. Sounds like it's a franchise type deal. I don't want. The guy wouldn't leave me alone. No, why don't you just go to one, okay, and try the food, and then we could talk about it. So we drove to Menifee, I think it was,
okay,
and checked it out. And after we ordered, I think we literally ordered one of everything off the menu just to say, okay, is the food good, right? Because we're going to bring this to the community. Is this something that we would stand behind? Is the food good? And you know what? The food was good. The price point was right. And it was durable, right? So in a downturn, it probably wouldn't pull up stakes and leave town.
Right.
That big patio with COVID turned out to be amazing.
A great thing. Mm-hmm.
So Doghouse wasn't premeditated, but it ended up being a natural fit for that location.
Yeah, and it works. It's always busy. People are always there.
Yeah, it's great.
Hanging on that patio and eating and hanging out. And you're right. During COVID, it was really good, too, to have that space.
Yeah. And I think they do a bunch of stuff too with like the different sports teams, and that's one of the things I liked when I went to
community involvement. Yeah,
right, exactly. In the Menifee location, they had all these pictures up of all the different softball teams and soccer teams and popcorn. And I was like, oh, cool. Okay, so these guys are going to be involved. So
there you go.
That's Doghouse.
All right. I've known you for a long time, and I don't think I've ever heard that whole story. So thank you. Thanks for sharing it. Okay. So what are you working on now?
Oh, man.
You got a couple things going on.
Yeah.
So why don't you talk about what's happening on Santa Fe?
Okay. So we're currently in construction on a project that has been referred to for quite some time now, for 5 years, as Terrace Lofts. It's on the corner of South Santa Fe and Terrace Drive. And it was referred to it that way, and for two reasons. One, it's on Terrace Drive. The other is the intent of delivering outdoor space, these terraces where we could take advantage of the climate, and you can have, as a renter, you could still have kind of a backyard. It might be elevated off the ground, but you have your private outdoor space. It's a 5-story building with 42 units in it. We are topping out the roof, I'm told, either Friday or Monday. So
exciting.
Super close. Yeah. Very exciting. And we should be starting move-ins in first quarter of next year.
Okay.
So we're getting close.
That's soon.
Very soon. Yeah.
Okay.
And what hasn't been public knowledge is the identity and the brand of the building. So it's actually not going to be Terrace Lofts, which I know you know it as that.
Okay.
The name that the project will bear is Found Lofts.
Okay. We're getting some juicy tidbits here today. Okay. Yes. Found Lofts.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. This is actually the first time I think we're kind of publicly releasing that. So the inspiration, the ethos for the brand is the idea of exploration, right? That all of us are in a way on a journey of life, and along that journey, there are many different moments of discovery, and really maybe the journeys for the self-discovery, right? So we're going to have a 60-foot mural on the building. The mural will, in ways, point to the brand. I'm not releasing yet how.
Okay.
But
we'll keep something secret for today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But let me pause there. So that's one of the projects that's coming out of the ground. I'm really excited about that. We're sticking with the intent. The intent for that project was to help energize the Envision Arts and Culture District for Downtown Vista, which is what a cool idea to have in your community plan.
I love it.
One of the selling points for me to plant, the business here. So that's in the works now. We also just had a hearing for another project on South Santa Fe, right off South Santa Fe's commonly referred to as Pheasant Hill. And that site was entitled for some homes that have been, the entitled site's been for sale for 3 years on the market. It hasn't been able to sell for a number of reasons. It wasn't really a marketable plan. Mm-hmm. So we are proposing a community of apartments on there, which is which is a couple things. One, it's growing the local community in downtown to support the businesses, which really aligns with the downtown specific plan, right? Creating this cultural and economic heart of the city of Vista of 100,000 residents in the core, back in the days of how communities function. There was a kind of a central area where these things happen. So we really, support that approach to placemaking and land use, and the fact that you've got the amenities here, the fact that you've got the transportation infrastructure. So that's another project that's in the works. These development projects takes years. Terrace Lofts, now Found Lofts, I need to condition myself that it's Found Lofts, is in its 6th year.
Okay.
Right. So these things take a lot of time, and you really have to have this commitment and just this relentless pursuit of the goal. So that one is years in the making. Those are kind of near-term things within the city of Vista that we're working on. We have a few other ones that are a little further out time-wise, and then we have projects that are outside of the city of Vista.
Okay. So you talked about the 60-foot mural, and I know you've incorporated art in some of your past projects. What do you think is important about incorporating art in a project? I mean, why is that something that's important to you? Why are you putting a 60-foot mural?
Yeah. What's a concise way to say that? I have a lot of emotions about it, and maybe that's a good springboard into it. I think art is expression, right? And we're fortunate to live in a country where we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression. And interpretation may be different from what the intent of the artist was, which is also kind of cool because it means different things to different people. So, my view is that a measure of a society's sort of cultural acumen or evolution is its ability, to invest in the arts and integrate them into the education, into the society. So personally, I think art is really important, and there's really no reason why art shouldn't be part of places. It doesn't have to be behind closed doors in a gallery or in just your house. It could be part of the project that you walk by every day. You get to experience some expression. It may be an expression of, here's a beautiful painting of an avocado. That's cool. It's an expression saying, hey, fruits and vegetables are awesome. And maybe it's a nod to the history of Vista, but art's cool.
Art's cool. I agree completely. I just was checking my notes here because I have so much. We've just been chatting. There's so many things I want to ask you. So obviously you have passion for the work that you do, and you're very thoughtful about the places where you do projects, and you're looking for these specific types of opportunities. And you're obviously excited by your work. But what do you think is hard? What's hard about what you do?
Yeah, I think it's probably similar to all entrepreneurs. It's living with the uncertainty, right? And that, for me, transitioning from GE to the entrepreneur side, it was sort of this severing this umbilical cord of salary and benefits, and this perceived stability. The reality is things can change overnight, and you get your notice and you don't have a job, right?
Well, so many people experienced that last year, right?
Totally.
Things changed.
Yeah. So I think with every project, there's an element of believing in a vision, and I think staying with that vision. And we tend to lean into the more sort of unorthodox things in placemaking, and in that we often have to get sort of our constituents and our capital partners on board with some of these ideas. Banks don't often see a value in a 60-foot mural that you have to have as a budget line item that costs real money, and we believe we should pay artists, fairly for their work. So I think the challenge is sticking with the intent, overcoming the uncertainty, and building support for the vision over a long period of time.
Love it. So let's talk about family for a moment. So how does being a husband and a father, how does that influence the work that you do?
Oh, it totally influences. I mean, especially after having kids, and right? So the lens on time, I think, for me changed a lot after we had kids, because it wasn't all of a sudden about, the next 20 years for me and Liz. It was the 20 years after that when Liam and Milana are maybe thinking about their own kids, right? And what's the world look like then?
Mm-hmm.
So as it relates to work, buildings have a, massive impact on our experience of life. Our everyday, everything we do is kind of, is in a man-made world, right? And this world is always competing with the natural world. So there's always this drive for sort of infinite demands with a very finite set of natural resources. So it's both, hey, what's my everyday experience? And it's also, what are we leaving behind, right? Buildings are such a big part of the carbon footprint.
Mm-hmm.
And then my general view of the land use policy that evolved around the advent of the automobile, and the sprawl that we live in today, it's obvious now it's not sustainable. Mm-hmm. Everybody understands that. Even if we go EV, even if we go autonomous, I mean, there has to be more efficiency, right? We had the luxury of not being so efficient when there was less of us humans, mm-hmm. but we have to be more efficient. So as it relates to, family, I think about sustainability, I think about affordability a lot. And we incorporate that into, I incorporate that into my approach for placemaking.
Mm-hmm. So when, so many times when we talk to career professionals, and I'm in a lot of women's groups for women in business, and they always ask, how do you balance work and family? They always, but nobody ever asks men that. So I want to ask you, how do you, I mean, I follow your socials. You're obviously having a great time with your family. Yeah. Your kids are adorable. Your wife is lovely. You're having a great time. How do you balance your family and the work that you do? Because it's demanding what you're doing.
Yeah, I prioritize my family.
Yeah.
That's how I balance it. Yeah, they're first. That's the easiest. Easy. Yeah, it's the easiest answer. I will not let work get in the way of family, right? I'm not going to choose more on the work side,
right,
for less on the family side. And that's a very kind of idealistic, high-level answer, but I really try to use that as a guiding post because, especially as the company is growing, I'm seeing more opportunities, more areas of mm-hmm. problem solving, and
right.
But I also think that my most important job is being a good father and a good husband. And I think I can have more impact in the world by raising really good kids.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
So, all this other stuff is secondary.
Okay. I like that answer. I like it. So, okay. So this is my last official question before we jump into our rapid fire. So what would you like the Vista community to know about your work or your projects, or what do you want, if people are listening, hopefully they're listening, what do you want to share? Is there anything that you want to just tell everybody about Tideline, about Lev, about the projects you're doing?
Specific to the Vista community, I would say this: there are a lot of unknowns with change, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know how things are going to evolve. I've had the fortune of having a number of roles through my professional roles where I've gotten to travel to different communities and participate in advisory panels and seeing communities grow. And there's always this element of change. It's, how big are these buildings going to be? How many neighbors are going to have? What's going to happen mm-hmm. with all these cars, and how are we going to get around? Is it going to be safe? So I would say that, reflecting on my experience and having traveled extensively in the U.S. and abroad, Vista Downtown has a really good plan. There are inconveniences with more people, and that's mm-hmm. the reality of the world we're living in. Yeah, we're going to have more neighbors. But I really, as I looked across the county and my experience, Vista has a really cool, fine grain downtown. I don't ever see it becoming this East Village mid-rise situation. The topography of the downtown, mm-hmm. the constraints of where the specific plan is. So I would say, less about Tideline, but I understand that people are anxious about what's happening in downtown. And I think downtown's got a very good future that will create value for everyone in the city, everyone that lives within the downtown. It'll support local businesses. I think it'll be a destination for people to come, even though we're not on the coast. I think there's a lot of cool things here that Oceanside doesn't have, Escondido doesn't have, San Marcos doesn't have. So if I would share anything with the Vista community, I'd say you've got a cool downtown, and it's going to change and evolve, but it's going to keep its fine grain, its sort of small business vibe, and that will forever set it apart from the downtowns like Oceanside. And it'll be very desirable.
Great. Okay, we're going to jump into rapid fire now. So I did send you these in advance so that it wouldn't put you on the spot too much. But I want to know a book you think that everyone should read.
Oh man, leisure reading is like a thing of the past these days with kids. But the book that I have on my nightstand that I reach for periodically is a book called I Am That.
Okay.
It's it's a Q&A with a Buddhist master called Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj.
Okay.
That's a mouthful, yep. But it's a book that I was turned on to some 20 years ago when I was going through some challenging stuff, when I found out my mom was diagnosed with Parkinson's and I was trying to make sense of life. And that book to me has been kind of this, something I leaned on when things didn't make sense. And it always had a way of kind of putting things in perspective. So that's the book I reach for.
Great. I'm putting it on my reading list right now.
Check it out.
Okay. A song you always have to turn up.
Well, the songs you did give me these in advance, so thank you. I had to think about this.
Well, it's hard to pick just one. Yeah. It really is.
So I thought about it. So
okay.
I have an answer.
All right, good.
I drive for now. I'm just driving our son to school, and a lot of times we jam out to Disney songs. So one of the songs that's on loud right now is the Jungle Book Baloo song.
Okay.
The Bare Necessities, the simple bare necessities of life. And it's such a catchy tune, but it's also got some real cool meanings in there for the little ones.
So this is from the very original old school Disney animated film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I like it.
Baloo's song, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. All right. What's something that inspires you?
My parents inspire me. They immigrated to this country as refugees. They gave up everything to give me and my brother an opportunity for a life of freedom, and I think about what they had to give up and the risk that they took when they denounced their citizenship in now Ukraine, then USSR, and left on a refugee path through Europe to ultimately get accepted as refugees to the US. And I just think about me and my wife having kids right now and how crazy it would be to say we're leaving and we're not going to speak the language of this place we're going to, and we're doing it because...
Yeah, it's hard to fathom that type of sacrifice. But look at the legacy that sacrifice did. They have you and now your children, and you're leaving a legacy in these communities with the people that you're raising and also the things that you build. So that's awesome. Thank you. Okay, last thing is just a Vista business that you think deserves a shout out.
Oh man, there's so many.
And there's so many. I know many.
That. That's what I love about downtown. All these little businesses where the owner is there, just the quality of the experience, the relationships. I mean, you name it.
You can say two if you want.
Twice on Main. It was Apothecary. Now it's Lemon.
Public Lemon?
Public Lemon. That's a really cool shop. Oh man, what's the other one? The family-owned Greek Mediterranean.
Oh, Shacks.
Shacks is awesome. Their food is phenomenal.
So good.
Hector and Shelley, 508. I mean, I'm biased because it's next to us, but we end up eating there all the time. Yeah. And it's just got this real like locals vibe that's so cool. It's so hard really to find these days. Yeah. Gosh, what's another one? I'm traversing Main Street. And then going
there's
down.
so many. There's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, you named some really good ones.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And nobody. I made Lev just pick a few. So if he didn't leave anyone out on purpose.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It's hard. I mean,
it's really hard, and it can change every day. Right.
Yeah.
Who needs a shout out today could maybe be different. So thank you. I want to thank you for being with me today on Velocity. We're just so excited to launch this podcast and to talk to people who are just doing great things in our community. And you immediately came to mind.
Thank you.
When I was putting together a list of folks I really want to talk to. And I just really appreciate you being here. And hopefully we'll have you back when Found Lofts is finished and we can talk more about the art and also the Pheasant Hills project. I'm assuming that will have a different name as well.
It will. And foundlofts.com now exists.
Okay.
And there's some interesting stories about the project there now. So if anyone wants to check it out. Thank you for having me. As I shared with you, it's my first time on a podcast. It didn't hurt.
Okay, good.
So it was fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So great to see you. Thank you,
Thanks.
Lev. All right, have a good one. Thank you for tuning into Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast, where we hear from the movers, shakers, and changemakers impacting Vista, California. To hear the latest from Velocity, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Vista Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit organization which serves as a catalyst to business growth. Visit us online at vistachamber.org.
This was a production of A Different Day Radio.